Hello, this is John. It is February 4th, 2017, and I wanted to bring this to your attention. This is from the Federal Bureau of Investigations in regards to symbols and logos used by pedophiles to identify sexual preferences. Now, I want to scroll down to these images, and I want you to note this image here, because in just a second I'm going to take you to the press conference of Los Angeles County, and where they have busted a huge pedophile ring. Hundreds of people have been arrested, and we'll go to that press conference now. But before I start the press conference, I'd like for you to take a look at the Los Angeles County Sheriff badge and look at the symbol right here that they have on the badge. They need to investigate the individual that was responsible for the design of this badge, or whoever approved the design of this badge, because you would think if you were in law enforcement, you would know what that symbol represents. But anyway, we're going to go to the press conference that they gave on February 2nd, 2017 in regards to the pedophile ring that was busted in Los Angeles County. Now, one thing I want you to pay very close attention to, about 22 minutes into this video, he speaks about the percentage of kids that are fallen into this human trafficking, and they are 70% are from foster care families. It's very important that we investigate CPS, family services, and the foster care system. For 70% of human trafficking victims coming from foster care, something is seriously wrong with the foster care system.
Thank you for coming here. My name is Captain Chris Marks of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and I'm the unit commander for the Human Trafficking Bureau and the Los Angeles Regional Human Trafficking Task Force. Thank you for attending today's press conference to announce the results of a statewide operation to combat human trafficking. In order to demonstrate the collaboration law enforcement has taken toward ending these crimes, we have invited several agencies who partnered with us for this operation and are also leading an anti-human trafficking efforts in their own jurisdictions today. So at this time, we'll start at the end. We'll ask each agency to state their name and the department they represent. So, sir, at the end.
Sergeant Ronald Harris, Florence PD.
Philip Branning, Director, Department of Los Angeles County Children and Family Services.
Sarah Campbell, San Diego Human Trafficking Task Force out of California Department of Justice.
David Nance, Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI in Los Angeles.
Scott Madden, Captain, Riverside County Sheriff's Department.
Tim Stack, Los Angeles Police Department, Human Trafficking Unit.
Lieutenant Brian Olmstead, Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office.
Sean Reagan, Special Agent in charge, FBI Los Angeles.
Leon Watts, LAPD Human Trafficking Unit.
Assistant Chief Dan Miner, California Highway Patrol.
Chief Crystal Quinn, California Highway Patrol.
Deputy in charge Jane Crichton of the Human Sex Trafficking Section in Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office.
Des Contreras, Kern County Sheriff's Office.
Karen Thacker, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, Division of Adult Parole Operations.
Joe Macias, Special Agent in charge for Homeland Security Investigations, Los Angeles.
Captain Stephen Oppler from the District Attorney's Office, Bureau of Investigation.
Terry McDonald, Probation Chief, Los Angeles County Probation.
Ron Moss, San Bernardino Police Department.
Captain Mike Ellis, Pomona Police Department.
Commander Paul LeBaron, Long Beach Police Department.
KBOC, Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking.
Cynthia Lee, Captain, Los Angeles Police Department.
Thank you. It's now my honor to introduce the Sheriff of Los Angeles County, Sheriff Jim McDonnell.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to all of our partners who've come a long distance this morning to be able to be here with us. Operation Reclaim Rebuild is a broad, statewide operation focused on reclaiming the victim and helping them to rebuild their lives. The operation involved more than 30 federal, state, and local agencies and task forces from across the state of California. It was conducted as a coordinated assault on one of the most heinous crimes of modern times, the exploitation for profit of another human being. With me are representatives from more than a dozen, 15 to be exact, federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, as well as both public and private service providers who all share in the mission to combat sex trafficking in all of its forms. These are the men and women to thank for the rescuing of 27 adult and 28 juvenile females and arresting 36 suspected traffickers and 142 so-called Johns, predators. In total, there were 474 criminal arrests made statewide in this operation. I'll give you the stories from throughout the state detailing the rescues and enforcement efforts are numerous. I'd like to share just a few to highlight the incredible work accomplished by the dedicated men and women who fight trafficking every single day. During the operation, a detective posing as a sex worker on a Compton street was approached by a suspect who identified himself as a pimp. The hostile suspect threatened to rob the woman. He pointed to another female in his car who worked for him. Detectives then arrested him. And that young girl in the car, she was a minor and had been earlier reported as a missing person. Our suspect had been trafficking her for sex. She is now getting help with our victim-centered service providers. A second case, our enforcement efforts were not confined to city streets. The operation targeted the traffickers who use the internet to exploit their victims. In Long Beach, detectives recovered 3 minors after the detectives noted that their sex ads were on the internet. The detectives posing as Johns answered the ads and requested they meet at a local hotel. Upon arriving, the detectives confirmed that the girls were juvenile victims of sex trafficking. The responsible traffickers are currently being investigated further. A third case, an undercover deputy posing as a 15-year-old female on social media was contacted by a suspect who recruited her to work for him in the commercial sex trade. After arranging a meeting, the pimp told her he was in San Bernardino and headed to Los Angeles County. He demanded that our detective, who was posing as a teenage girl, have $1,000 ready for him by the time he arrived. Presumably, she was supposed to earn the money by sex trafficking herself. Upon arriving at the meeting, the suspect was arrested by task force detectives. The breadth and scope of Reclaim and Rebuild was specifically timed for January, which is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. It was designed to send a strong message to the traffickers: don't do business in Los Angeles County or the state of California, because we will find you and prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. To the Johns, sex with a minor is nothing short of child molestation, and we aim to treat it as such. And most importantly, to the victims, you are worthy of more, and we will work tirelessly with our partners, such as the Coalition Against Slavery and Trafficking, or CAST, and Saving Innocence, to provide you services and to help you rebuild your life. The mission of the LA County Sheriff's Department Human Trafficking Bureau and the LA Regional Human Trafficking Task Force is to, 1, rescue the victim and provide victim-centered wraparound services and support, to aggressively investigate the heinous crimes committed and arrest and prosecute the perpetrators to the fullest extent of the law. And our goal is to impact the demand and create awareness that sex with a minor makes that John a child molester. The Los Angeles Regional Human Trafficking Task Force is like no other. It combines one mission under one roof: the investigative strategies of Homeland Security, the FBI, dozens of policing agencies across Los Angeles County, and the leadership and expertise of the nation's largest sheriff's department. We partner with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Los Angeles District Attorney and State Attorney General, all whom bring the prosecutorial authority to bear. I'd now like to introduce to you the District Attorney of Los Angeles County, Jackie Lacey. Jackie.
Good morning, and thank you, Sheriff McDonnell. And thank you to the men and women of the Los Angeles Human Trafficking Task Force. I'm pleased to say that members of my office, both prosecutors and investigators, are part of the task force and actively participated in Operation Reclaim and Rebuild. Over the past few years, we've been fortunate to witness a major shift in public attitudes towards the sex trafficking of minors. We no longer consider minors to be the criminals, but victims. For that, I want to thank people like Kay Buck at CAST and the staff at Saving Innocence for advocating on behalf of the children who were exploited for profit. These voices helped bring about a significant sea change, not only in attitudes, but in public policy. It is our job in law enforcement to protect children, all children, especially those who've fallen prey to adults who seek to profit from their bodies. We will not tolerate the sexual exploitation of children by anyone, not the sex trafficker and not the people who pay to sexually abuse them. This operation is part of our ongoing effort to stop human trafficking in Los Angeles County. Through coordinated efforts like these, we have and will continue to work together to curtail the sex trade and rescue young people from its grips. We will disrupt the activities of traffickers and those who wish to purchase sex from these vulnerable victims. They will be arrested and they will be prosecuted, and the victims will be rescued. My office remains firmly committed to helping underage victims of sex trafficking break away from their captors. Members of my office's human trafficking section rolled out with law enforcement over the weekend to assist in the operation. But our work does not end here. Over the next several days and weeks, Deputy District Attorney Jane Creighton, who leads the human sex trafficking section, and other prosecutors will be filing criminal charges against those who were arrested as part of this operation. My office is committed to aggressively prosecuting the sex traffickers and those who pay for sex with underage victims. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to now introduce LAPD Captain Cynthia Lee.
Good morning. I'd like to start off by saying, this is Human Trafficking Month, and the collaboration between all of these agencies were just amazing. This is so important to LAPD personnel and the command staff that we assigned 182 LAPD personnel to this 3-day task force, and this was their primary function. As covered already, the numbers of the rescues, the arrests was just phenomenal. Reclaim and Rebuild serves as a shining example of the power of collaboration. The Los Angeles Police Department is proud to join forces with our partner agencies to stem the growing epidemic of human trafficking. We hope the efforts this past weekend will help turn the tides for thousands of people who find themselves victimized on our streets and in our neighborhoods. As stated, human trafficking, although this was Human Trafficking Month, this is addressed daily. Unfortunately, we have to do that, so thanks for the collaboration with the agencies. A lot of work was put into this. Good numbers, which means that although it's a good job, it's a sad job. So thank you.
Thank you. Another great partner now, Homeland Security Investigations, Los Angeles Special Agent in Charge, Joseph Macias. Joe.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. The sheriff said, my name is Joe Macias. I'm the Special Agent in Charge for Homeland Security Investigations here in Los Angeles. And I think, the title of this operation, Reclaim and Rebuild, says it all. It really does. We attacked this operation in a two-prong. One, to rescue victims, to make sure that we collaborated together to rescue the victims and where they were. We also made sure that we identified the victims, because what we wanted to do is have this as a victim-centered approach and make sure that we had the resources in order to help them for their next step, to reclaim their lives and to rebuild their lives. The second prong is our communities. What we wanted to do is actually rebuild our communities. Where these human trafficking organizations have taken over, we want to make sure that we get those communities back. So we wanted to do that. The suffering of the victims is one of the paramount reasons HSI is involved in this task force. We want to make sure that we can collaborate with all the people up here, with all these task forces, and state and local, federal, even bringing in and closing the loop with our NGOs, our non-government organizations, to make sure that these victims are taken care of. In today's world, human trafficking, it's like modern-day slavery. This is something that has to be attacked. This is something that we can't leave by the wayside. And for HSI itself and all of our partners here,
I commit, and I'm honored to be up here to be part of this task force and say that HSI will use this as one of the priorities. Thank you so much.
And now a great partner on the community side from the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, or CAST, Executive Director Kay Buck.
Thank you, Sheriff. Our partnership in this innovative model of enforcement, law enforcement, and victim services collaboration is truly working. I'm proud to be here on behalf of the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, representing a whole team of service providers who partnered with us to serve the human trafficking victims identified this past week. From a 24-hour confidential hotline to shelter and services designed to empower victims to rebuild, we are committed to serving victims of human trafficking of all ages, all genders, and immigration status. I want to thank Sheriff McDonald and the whole department and all the members of the task force who are here today and those who couldn't be here today. It is clear that by working together, we identify and support more victims and we hold more traffickers accountable. January, as it's been said, is Human Trafficking Prevention Month. The operations brought much needed attention to this issue of labor and sex trafficking occurring in our communities. The same communities where we take our children to school, meet with friends at the park or go out for dinner, and attend places of worship with our families. This weekend, we identified a human trafficking survivor from a country in Asia who was picked up at an upscale prominent hotel here in Los Angeles. She received immediate care, basic necessities, and information to access resources she's entitled to under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. At first, she was reluctant to even speak to us as a service provider, and she was also afraid of law enforcement. This scenario is altogether too common. Victims are afraid and don't know who to trust. But we earn their trust as a task force. We do this in many ways by offering language line assistance to communicate in their native language, providing safety and transportation, and basic items like clothing, food, and shelter. By seeing law enforcement and community service providers working together with trust, it shows survivors we're working together on their behalf. It does take time, but it's what the task force is doing. Stepping out boldly to show victims that they're not alone and show traffickers that our law enforcement officers are coming after them. A victim-centered collaboration like the one we have here is crucial. On Saturday, our emergency response team worked with a young woman who was trafficked from the Central Valley to Pomona. She was afraid and not sure where to go for help. And if you recall, Saturday was very cold that night, and she was provided an emergency bag made for us by another close partner, Purpose Church in Pomona. Filled with warm clothing and toiletries, she was relieved to be able to change into just a warm pair of clothes. To many, it may have seemed like just a new pair of sweatpants, but for her, it was a cloak of reclaimed dignity. When she was immediately provided legal and social services, the only thing that she could say was how grateful she was to be able to talk to someone who wanted her to get home. Again, we earned her trust as a task force. It takes a broad coalition like the task force to provide this. Working together is truly the only way to comprehensively and effectively address this crime. By bringing our respective resources and skills together as a task force, this generation of victims will be our last. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. So at this time, we'd be glad to answer any questions from any member of the attending law enforcement agencies. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, great question. So there's what you call hot spots, or termed street as blades. So there's certain areas in certain communities where where it's known where Johns can visit and they'll find sex workers standing on the street. So we did operations this week for the Sheriff's Department, our task force, in Pomona, South El Monte, and the city of Compton, in areas that we know that are frequented by this type of operations. But these exist in all other areas. And Kay mentioned how cold it was this weekend. We put out undercover deputies in this cold weather, and a lot of times they're only standing on the street corner for less than 3 minutes before a John came up and engaged in a transaction with them. So. Right. So it's coming two ways. Either physically through geographical location, where it's a runaway and they're maybe on a transit piece, or they're in a school, or just in a public place, but mainly also through social media, where they're professional predators, and they seek these girls out that are vulnerable, and they find them on the internet, and they arrange meets, and essentially become their pimps. Anybody else want to talk about their respective areas? And no, okay.
Maybe just yeah, just an add-on to that question. You mentioned hotspots, and certainly there are hotspots where people tend to go where this is more prevalent. But it can happen in any single community, anywhere in the nation. Because of the internet, there are no boundaries. So people who are predators get on and they'll type in there that they're looking for an 11-year-old girl. And unfortunately, they can find that through a pimp. It's then done over the web and over cell phones, so it's hard to find. So the key piece here is that we need the public to be able to say when they see activity that would be indicative of this kind of behavior. A lot of men coming and going after a brief stay to, it could be an RV at the end of their street, it could be a motel, it could be a hotel. Look for things like that. Give us a call. We want to come out and check that out. If it's a false alarm, that's great. If it's something, you may save a kid's life. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, we look at about 70% of the kids who are trafficked come from foster care. They've been victimized over and over again, and in many cases they're looking for love. They're looking for someone who cares about them. The pimp says that they're going to give them this and leads them down the path to destruction. But any family, any kid anywhere with the internet can get involved in a situation where they think they're meeting somebody who cares about them on the web. That person, the predator, the pimp, arranges to meet them discreetly, and then from there could drug them and then drag them into a life of this kind of behavior, of enslaving them essentially, and then the search is on when the parents report them missing to be able to try and find and rescue them. This is an ongoing issue for us. Parents can be much more attentive as to what their young children are doing on the web, what sites they're visiting, and who they're contacting. When you think about it, you would never let your kid go into a room with a child molester or a predator. But in essence, if you're not monitoring what they're doing, they're by virtue of the computer, they're dealing with a predator or a child molester, once removed. And so we all need to realize that this is not something that happens somewhere else. This is happening everywhere, and we're all vulnerable to that. Yeah. Yeah, that's fairly routine. I mean, while we say 70% of the kids are the most vulnerable from foster care and other backgrounds like that, we have a lot of people from all sorts of neighborhoods, a diverse background, more affluent kids who don't have as much, but kids who are looking for something, looking for excitement, looking for a relationship, and unfortunately their parents aren't aware of what they're doing at all, and they'll arrange for a meet. And that one meet may be the last time that the parents see them. So in an effort to prevent this, we want everybody to realize that this affects each and every one of us, regardless of our background, our socioeconomic status, or demographic. It's extremely alarming. And that's why we put the resources we have into human trafficking. That's why you see all of the agencies represented here are taking this as seriously as we are, because it is that prevalent. It is that big a deal, and the outcomes are dramatic. Please, yeah.
So, Sheriff, I really appreciate you bringing attention to this. I'm Philip Browning. I'm the director of the Department of Children and Family Services. So we have about 35,000 children in care today, and we get about 200,000 calls a year, many of which are referring a situation where we've got a suspected child trafficking situation. So we have a hotline that's manned 24/7, 365 days a year. It's 1-800-540-4000. And as the sheriff and the DA said, this is a situation that everyone needs to take responsibly. If you look around in your neighborhood, you'll probably find somebody who's a victim of or engaged in this activity. Children are now the primary, not suspects, they're not prostitutes, they're victims. And we have to make that known, and we need to reach out and provide services to these individuals. Many of these come from communities, as the sheriff said, that poverty exists. And there are also a number of those individuals who are coming from more affluent situations. And so this is not unique to any one specific area, but we have specially trained staff who, along with other service providers, really try to protect these children. And tonight we'll find situations which will come to our attention through one of our hotline calls where we'll have to go out and send a worker not to prosecute, not to arrest, but to try to save this young girl for the most part, sometimes boys, but primarily young girls. We're talking about 12, 13, and 14. We had a situation just this week where we had a 14-year-old who had a child when she was 13. She's autistic. She's been taken advantage of in a manner that you can't imagine. So I would just call on all of you to help us call that hotline, call the people behind us. Let's try to stop this. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for attending today. Most of all, I want to thank all the agencies, some who drove very long distances to be here. Thank you for supporting us.